Hello friends, how's it going? This video is about my friend whose name is Rich. He's been living in China for 7.5 years and he kindly agreed to share his experience and feelings about living here for such a long time. And this interview happened in a resort called Racha. I really would like to recommend this place to go to visit because it's got a stunning view. It's in a village. It's very close to Nanjing. I would say it's within the boundaries of the city, but on the outskirts. So let's check it out. Rich, you've been here for 7.5 years and now you are at the point of your life when you have to leave. And I would like to ask a few questions to understand your experience, your feelings and general opinion about living in China. First off, what brought you here in the first place?
The company decided to close our factory in Bristol. So although I lived in Liverpool, our factory was in Bristol. And the company decided to move that product to Beijing. And they needed people from the factory in Bristol to come to China. And I was the only one daft enough to say yes. When the opportunity came, I'd been a couple of times before. My partner, Kirsty, had never been before. So obviously for me personally versus her, there was a lot of discussions and a lot of decisions. And we came, you know, like yes, no, all the way to the final date where I had to submit my answer to the UK. And eventually we decided to come. And obviously that initially was Shanghai and it was on a 2-year contract. So that was kind of a very short-sighted view to, we will be here for 2 years, we will enjoy Shanghai, we'll get to spend time with my friends, and we'll get to kind of see and travel Asia and travel around China and travel around Asia at the same time.
How did you find it when you just came?
So yeah, very, very kind of exciting and daunting. I think it was a very interesting mix of the two, because even though I'd been before, I think there's a big difference between when you're going on holiday somewhere or even for work, you know, still it's a holiday and you're just, you know, you've got money in your pocket, you're using your passport, you're using cash. And then there's a whole other side of it where you want to start your life there and you've obviously got to find your own way, your own path.
You spent about 3 years in Shanghai. How did you like it living there?
Very good. So I think that although part of that time was during COVID, nonetheless, I think it was a very exciting place to live. And I think that being a fan of like music, it was one of the places like that bands would come and play. So there was always opportunities to go and see bands.
Your work brought you to Nanjing after Shanghai. How did you like it living here comparing to Shanghai?
So I think that for Shanghai, for all, and you know, we do love Shanghai, I love Shanghai. I think that for all of the positives, I think that it's very full on, you know, it's very busy. It's obviously like just from the metro, the roads, you know, business, everything is just really, really intense. And I think that not to its detriment, but Nanjing's a lot more like relaxed. I think there's more green space. I think when I've been reminded several times, you go up Shanghai Tower, you do a lap, you look around the whole of Shanghai, you see very little green space. You know, and I think that it's more like being in a machine in Shanghai. It's a machine to be productive. And I think that, yeah, of course, there's parts of it that are there for you to have a good time, but nonetheless, it's like there are, you know, it's very intense and very oppressive, not from a kind of like let's say like a very like personal perspective, but more just like, as I said, an intensity. You know, the intensity is always there, and Nanjing I think is a lot less intense, and I think generally the roads are less quiet. There's more green space. There's the pace of life is slower, and I think that really it was a stark contrast against Shanghai. Really, Nanjing is a place where you really see that there is a different pace of life compared with Shanghai.
I'd like to focus more on your experiences living in Nanjing. What are your best memories living here?
That's a good question. So I think unfortunately, as we've talked before, my first experiences in Nanjing was home lockdown, which was, you know, COVID, and unfortunately, you know, we all went through that. But nonetheless, I think that there's an interesting part of that where I had to butcher a chicken as part of that, which, you know, was something I never would have had to have done if that hadn't have happened. So looking on the positive side, I got a new experience from that. But I think over time, it maybe stunted our, let's say, our integration into in life. You know, it slowed down how quickly we got into, let's say, enjoying life really here. We were existing, but we weren't really kind of flourishing, I would say. So for me, I think that aside, I think that even though, as I said, in Shanghai there's more like big bands or bands you can see, I think the music scene is more vibrant in Nanjing, and there was, at least, you know, then there was more opportunities to play music with people, and there was more opportunities to, just for that kind of normal, like grassroots kind of music scene was more accessible. And I really appreciated that side of, let's say, the culture here being there. The punk festival that you and I have been to, obviously we've played in bands together, and I think, like I said, that would have been very much more difficult in Shanghai. And I really think that that's more what I appreciated of my life here, is just that more connection with my own creative side and my own kind of musical side, I suppose, as well.
Would you say that Nanjing is an interesting city?
I would, yeah. I think that for me, again, compared with Shanghai, it's got the historical side. You know, it's got effectively what people go to Xi'an for, the wall. We've got a wall here, you know, and there's a lot of historical zones and historical sites. I always find it really interesting when I'm cycling around. I love to cycle. I think that's one thing, if I could say, that people miss out on when you get the metro or you get a taxi. You miss a lot, you know, even though you don't think about it. You know, your view out the window is this, and I think if you cycle around, you really get to, you know, look around and look down and see what's going on. And I cycle a lot. I cycle as much as I can, and I love here, like the kind of the way that the city's built. There's a lot of like streams and, you know, tributaries and you know, the rivers, and there's a really good paths alongside a lot of them. So again, you can walk or cycle along those, and I really appreciate that there is, even though there's a lot of new development, there is still a good balance between, as I said, good green spaces, but also you feel like there's always some kind of, like, you know, water nearby, which again is a strange thing to say. And also the historical sites, you know, you feel like you're really in a place that has a lot of layers to it, not just, as I said, compared with Shanghai, stark contrast with Shanghai, where it just feels like it's modern only and there is nothing else, where Nanjing has several different facets to it. Of course, it has, you know, the Jiangning area, the new development zone, but also it has a lot of historical you know, faculties, and also it really has the good connection with nature. And also, obviously, as we are at the moment, very nearby, you can easily get out into the countryside and just experience this, which is also, again, would be, you know, a trip to Moganshan, an hour and a half on a train or something in Shanghai. This is literally on our doorstep.
Can you recommend places to visit?
Sure. So I think that when I first visited Nanjing, obviously Xuanwu Lake is a classic. You know, you can't not see that if you visit. The Rainflower Terrace is really good to get a view of downtown. Yuhuatai is a really nice park, very nice kind of strolls around there, and also there's a nice museum in there. But I think the one place that I would recommend firstly is Newshoshan, because I think that it's got a nice surprise without giving away too much. Like, actually, when we visited, it's more like, what I knew about it was the outside architecture, but actually inside there's kind of a nice surprise for anyone who's willing to kind of go and investigate further. So I would say start there, then work your way out to the others. Spoonful of mustard, it doesn't have that impact of like wasabi's.
Your favorite bar or area where nightlife is booming?
So I think the first answer I would give is 1912 by Jahu, Red Room and the Foodgasm. I think they're both round the corner from one another. Really good area to kind of have drinks, and food there is in both places really good as well. I also really like Wing Station as well, which is a little bit further away from me, but still, you know, really cool place and nice vibe and nice outside seating area.
And like a Bass cheesecake.
Yeah.
But I think it's vegan, so obviously it's not like what you'd normally have from
Okay,
a
thank
Bass
you.
cheesecake, but it tastes delicious.
Cheers, man. I'll try. What challenges did you experience living in Nanjing?
What challenges? I think starting from zero, very much in terms of friends, and I think finding my way in terms of a support network, you know, friends, culture, places to play sports. And I think that for me, the key challenge is to find my people. And I think for me, music was probably the key biggest thing that I found here that helped me. And I think that the challenge that helped me solve was to really find a bit of a friendship circle.
Mike, what's the opposite of Zenith and Neymar?
Nadir.
Nadia.
Nadir, yeah.
Nadia and...
How would you describe foreign community in Nanjing?
I think that the foreigner community in Nanjing is very welcoming. I think that I've never had a bad experience here. And I think that although, again, it's ridiculous to say for a 20 plus million town, you know, population city, the foreigner population is a manageable size. You know, you feel like you know people, you see the same people around, and that's kind of nice because it gives it a very comfortable kind of feeling. You see people that you know frequently, even though it's a larger place.
LBC and the rest is politics and stuff like that.
A bit of a philosophical question. What did you learn from Chinese culture?
I think I'll give two answers there. I think firstly, I would say professionally that you can always be more productive than you think you can be. I think there's a lot of pressure to be productive in China and to be more focused on, let's say, output. Like, you know, you're measured by your results, you're measured by the things that you do. And I think compared with my previous experiences, it wasn't that didn't happen, but I think here it's more acute and there's more focus on that. And I think personally, one thing I've taken from my time here on myself as an individual, I would say that I think that you should never stop trying to be open and trying to understand people, because I think there are always opportunities to understand other people and yourself more. And I think that can be both as in terms of learning, trying to learn, like learning Chinese, learning Mandarin, even though I wouldn't say I'm very good at it. I think the attempt, it was important, and what I've learned wasn't always like a word or a phrase, but sometimes it would be like a kind of deep dive into like a character or a meaning, or, you know, what dongxi means or whatever it might be. And I loved all of these little stories I learned, and that's also made me start looking at even English differently. And you start almost, that attempt to learn another language has made me almost think about language differently, and that kind of has expanded my mind, I think, a little bit. So that's maybe the first part. The second part is that I think generally people here are so interested to talk to you about where you're from or your experiences here. And I think that openness and inquisitiveness has reopened that part of myself as well. I think we're all guilty a little bit as you get older to kind of close off. And I would like to think that living here has kind of reopened me up a little bit.
What message would you leave to your expats and local friends in Nanjing?
Don't change. Keep on keeping on. I think when you leave something behind, you know it'll never be quite the same if you come back. But I hope that Nanjing keeps doing what it's doing, and that when I visit again, that it won't have changed too much, so that I can still, you know, kind of be welcomed back and appreciate my time here again in the future.